Hey guys, welcome back to our podcast, Let's Be Open. For this episode we're going to talk about the environment, so something that's very close to my heart and I think Chloe's as well. So I think we're at this kind of crux point with the environment at the moment where it could go one of two ways, and it needs to go a positive direction for the world to prosper. So a lot of cool things that we're going to be talking about today. Please like, subscribe, and share if you think our stuff is worth sharing.
Yeah.
Because we think it is.
So we thought first of all we'd talk about why we want to do this. I mean, Tristan sort of already said about why it's important, but yeah, we want to do this episode because we think it's really important that we share a message about what could potentially happen to our environment and our planet, which then affects us as humans in the future. And it's really important if you've got children or you're thinking of having children for their future as well. Because for us, a lot of this stuff may not even affect us in our lifetime, or it might be the end of our lifetime, but the future generations, it's really important that we start making these changes.
Yeah, definitely.
And also that some people might think, oh, what's the point? You know, there's lots of people who don't do these sort of things, and what's the point in you making a change? But for every person that makes these small changes that we're going to talk about, it can have a massive impact on our world.
Yeah. There's such there's a lot of people that you talk to that think that it's gone beyond. There's nothing you can do now. So what's the point? That kind of nihilistic approach to saving the world, and I just think that's completely backwards. And there is definitely things that you can do, and via the 1% effect, which is by me talking about it, I spread my message to 10 people, and those 10 people can take on board what I say, and they might spread it to a couple of people, and they may spread it to a couple of people. So by the very nature of the way that 1% effect works, you can spread the knowledge, you can get people to change the ways that they act, and there can be a huge paradigm shift, and possibly the course of humanity may change for the better.
Yeah.
So if nothing else, you can at least try.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah.
Otherwise, also, do you want it to be hell on earth in 10 years' time, or would you rather it be in 110 years' time? And that's a big difference that you can definitely contribute to.
Yeah, and they're not hard things to do and to change in your lifestyle. And also some of the things we're going to talk about, I think some people aren't even aware that that it's a problem. Maybe you've not even thought of some of the things that we're going to talk about. I certainly hadn't a couple of years ago. So yeah, that's basically why the introduction, why we want to talk about all of this today. So the first thing that we kind of wanted to talk about was the effects on our environment and our planet, that the actions that we're currently taking are having on our world, and environment, planet kind of factors. I mean, some things you've probably heard of, like global warming. We kind of want to go in a little bit more depth, so that people are more aware, I think, of what's going on.
So if we discuss first the paramount issues with the environment and the things that are going wrong, which are causing it to get worse and worse every day. So the first things that come to mind for most people: single-use plastics filling the ocean. I'm sure a lot of people have seen Seaspiracy with how much single-use plastics there are. So there was a statistic in that 90% of all plastic ever produced has ended up in the ocean, which is just insane, isn't it? Like, when you think about the amount of rubbish that you throw away every week, or even recycle every week, it is a lot. There's a lot just for one person. Just for me, I'm throwing out disposable plastic, a lot every week. And you think about 90% of that is ending up in the ocean. I mean, for starters, all of those raw materials, the oil that you're using to get that, is being pulled from the earth, and then it's being discarded straight into the sea as plastic, which is then being consumed by marine life, and that's getting into their bodies, that's killing them. And if it's not killing them, it's getting into our bodies through eating this fish. And then we have this plastic inside of us. And this stuff has already been shown to have terrible knock-on effects for human health. And, it's getting to the point where ocean animals are borderline unedible because there's so much of this crap in their systems. And this comes back to humans then suffering the consequences of it. And before we know it, we've got all these massive, massive problems off the back of just that one thing, which is plastic, let alone things like electronics and stuff like that. electronics are ridiculously labor intensive to pull apart and get them back to the raw materials, because they're just a massive collaboration of all these different elements, and they normally end up tossed at the side of the road in the ocean. All of the materials that have been used to produce those are ridiculously hard to get back to their raw states, so most of it is just casted aside, which causes humans to have to pull more natural resources from the earth, and this dynamic cannot go on indefinitely. At some point, humans are going to run out of this disposable culture that we have at the moment. It can't go on forever. And that's just the first couple of things to do with the environment.
Yeah, so that's mainly like waste disposal, and contaminating the oceans and stuff with plastics, like you said, and getting rid of our rubbish, basically, which is kind of connected to pollution as well, is another issue, because of, and this all comes down to basically there being more and more humans, so overpopulation, and the pollution that's in air and water. I mean, I think we read a stat, didn't we, that last year in 2020, more people died from air pollution than COVID. So COVID is made out to be like really bad, but actually there's more people dying from air pollution. And you go to countries like China, which I've been to, and you never see a blue sky in China. It's just smog all year round. Like can't see the sky, the atmosphere, because there's so much pollution.
Insane, isn't it? And you're sort of working on a problem that's not a problem. The overpopulating of the planet, the COVID killing a small percentage of people, is possibly a blessing in disguise, but we're trying to prevent that blessing in disguise. And we're not even looking for the whole year about the excess pollution, the more single-use gloves and masks and all of this stuff.
Oh yeah, those are contaminating the oceans.
Yeah, it's kind of a backwards way to look at it, isn't it?
Yeah, and the other thing is water pollution. So water pollution comes from so many different things, but like the farming, the agriculture industry uses pesticides, fertilizers, weed killer. That all runs off the soil into the rivers, into the streams, into the ocean. It kills loads of species of fish and whatever else live in the water. And then also water pollution in the ocean. You've got issues like fishermen throwing off things off their boats, and fish nets killing the coral reefs and killing fish, sharks, dolphins, all sorts of different species. And another thing that we've like also been looking up on is the loss of biodiversity as well, and that's not just in the sea, that's on land as well. So deforestation, things like palm oil, which is in a lot of our foods, and also soy. Yeah, so we're going to talk about that, because if you're thinking of going vegan to help the planet, or you are a vegan, you might not realise that eating a lot of your vegan replacement foods like soy yogurt and burgers and sausages, all the things they do, are genetically modified soy, and a lot of that is produced in these places where they're using loads of fertilizers, pesticides, weed killer, and all of that.
Cutting down rainforests.
Yeah, cutting down rainforests, so all those animals are losing their homes, and then not only that is causing more water pollution as well, because it's such a popular product now, soy. It's a trendy thing to have when you're a vegan. And there's a massive demand for it because it replaces meat. But now that issue is that there's all this farming going on, which is, killing the rainforest and then polluting the water. And not only that, it's killing the soil as well.
Yeah, and also, so cutting down the rainforests in order to have that. So rainforest, where you cut down the edge of the rainforest, because it's been untampered with and it's been left, it's been regenerative for years and years. That is such nutrient-dense soil. So the Amazon rainforest and other rainforests are getting chopped back. People are using the wood from that nice cheap wood that's been there for thousands of years, and then in that decent, really good quality soil that's never been farmed, they're just whacking up loads of plantations of palm oil and soy, using that good soil just to make a cheap buck. But the problem is that you've chopped down the lungs of the earth. That's the thing. Having all of those things are the things that we breathe, all of those densely populated trees, rather than just the odd palm tree. Yeah. Are they palm trees where you get palm oil? I guess it is.
Yeah, I guess so.
And that's another knock-on effect, which is causing the soil there, the only good soil left on the earth almost, to become even worse quality, like we do with all the other. When you farm land, you're constantly pulling nutrients from the land. You're putting harsh fertilizers on it, and the land has less and less nutrients in it. So using the one at the edge of the rainforest, brilliant in the short term. Long term, though, the nutrients that soil gives us, goes into our body. So the vitamins that you get from those soils go into our body. The vitamins that you get from vegetables go into our body. The problem with just using farming and using it again and again and again every year, the soil has no nutrients left in it to give. And this is the thing that modern day farming, barely any of it is regenerative, barely any. So you're just constantly pulling from the earth, and at some point in time, we're not going to get the nutrients from those plants anymore, from those vegetables anymore.
Yeah, so it's not just soy. This is also talking about general farming as well, like where you get all your fruits and vegetables and everything, even if they're imported from another country. So soil degradation was one of the top environmental factors, including like loss of biodiversity, climate change, deforestation. And I think a lot of people aren't aware of that. I mean, I wasn't aware of that 2 years ago, that the quality of our soil was an issue. I didn't ever think of that. I just thought of, the problem is that animals are being killed and rainforests are being cut down. But now there's the issue of the soil. And if you don't have good soil, you've got no good crops, no food, and then no food, no humans. And there was actually a stat that I was going to read that said that if you the UN estimates that we only have 60 harvests left before we run out of soil. So if you're thinking of having children, or you've got children, in their lifetime there could potentially be no soil, and that means no food, no humans. And obviously along with that there's all the other issues like polluted oceans, rainforests, coral reefs being ruined. But yeah, so that's quite important with the soil, because I think a lot of people don't actually realise that, and that means that our food isn't as good quality as well.
Yeah, definitely.
And this is where it loops around to what you just said about regenerative farming and agriculture. So again, if you're thinking of becoming a vegan, or you are a vegan, you may think that using animals in the farming industry is not good, but actually they are needed for natural fertiliser for the soil, rather than using artificial fertilisers. So that is the aim to get to, is regenerative farming, where they use, so they have grass-fed cows, so they're fed on grass rather than corn and all that rubbish that they're normally pumped with, and antibiotics. So there's no antibiotics used. They eat natural food, they eat grass. That is the goal, to get to the farming industry too. And then our soils will be more healthy, we have better crops, don't need to use the weed killers.
Yeah, so they create the balance, don't they? So in that vegan diet book, Mark Hyman talks about the balance between, if you went vegan, you would cause massive consequences to the world, because the food chain gets messed up. So you need to have animals there. They need to be farmed to some extent, whether you eat them or not, but they need to be there to produce certain things, to suck up certain amounts of carbon dioxide and stuff like that. Yeah. So they do need to be there. While we're talking about that, one of the other environmental issues that is such a huge problem, and humans just don't think about it too deeply, which is probably because we're so constrained for time and stuff like that, but we'll come on to that later on. But the other problem is that the globalization and getting things from the other side of the world has a massive knock-on effect to the world, the world's health. So if you go to wherever, Lidl, Aldi, I think Aldi's quite good actually at getting local meat, and people are coming around to this, which is great. Yeah. But if you buy the cheapest leg of lamb, which is normally New Zealand, like that's the furthest place in the world you could be getting meat from. And a friend of mine actually, through the 1% effect, got me into buying local stuff, and I kind of never knew why. I just thought, wouldn't you get the cheapest thing? This is years ago. And through the 1% effect, here I am preaching the same kind of stuff and following that guy's good example. Getting meat from halfway across the world, it has to be transported here. It has to be on a big ship, which is running on very, very cheap fuel. They run on awful quality fuel and let out terrible pollution into the seas and into the atmosphere, shipping that stuff over here. So the more you're buying from those places far away, firstly, you're supporting someone else's economy. Secondly, you're polluting the atmosphere. The carbon footprint of getting your meat halfway across the world is awful. Then you've got to think about the condition of that animal. That animal, they're normally live exported halfway across the world. So you've got a sheep or a lamb in a tiny little pen the whole way across the world. I think there was a big thing with one of these ships that got stuck a while ago. And they're live exporting all these animals, but there's no food on board for these animals. So they're getting shipped halfway across the world. they're in awful conditions, and then we're here, oh yeah, that's lovely, isn't it? That cheap cut of lamb. And it's like, is it really worth it? Like, there's huge knock-on effects to that. Also, getting, if you get your pork, I think, is a big problem in Thailand, in Vietnam, places like that. Places that have huge factory farms. Huge factory farms have massive health consequences to human beings in general. The bigger the farm, the faster disease spreads. The closer together the animals are, the faster the disease spread. And the problem with this is, in China and places like that, if one animal gets sick, instead of killing off the whole crop of all of the animals, call them a crop, but yeah, instead of killing off all of the animals, they give all of these animals, even the not sick ones, antibiotics to make it profitable, so that they can still sell them, so that they can save the animals in the short term, slaughter the animals for profit, and then sell them to us. If you're buying into these industries, you're contributing to antibiotic resistance, which is one of the biggest problems that humanity faces. As soon as all the antibiotics get resistant, we can't use them anymore. So, and we're right on the precipice where there's a few viruses that are starting to get through that cannot be curtailed by antibiotics. And the problem with that is we'll be giving birth, we'll be getting big cuts in our legs, and there won't be anything you can do to stop that infection moving across your body. And people will be dying of things that they were dying pre-medicine era. Mm-hmm. And this all comes from buying cheap shit meat from China. And
Asda's the other one. Asda's got, if any of you buy meat from Asda, check their chicken, because most of it is from Thailand. And again, it's like, you think that, it's cheap, I'll get that. But, you're getting Thailand chicken. I think all of their ready meat, their cooked meat, chicken is all from Thailand.
Yeah, terrible. Really got to start. Humans we've got to all start being more conscientious and looking into our ingredients a little bit more. When something's got palm oil on it, chances are you're chopping down the rainforest by buying that.
And going back to the soy thing as well, if you do want to have soy, try your best to look for non-GMO organic soy.
Yeah, European even.
Yeah, European,
There's no rainforest to chop down in Europe. So.
Rather than, obviously it's hard with like yogurt and burgers, but again, maybe look at other vegan options that don't have soy. And actually, on the topic of burgers, for any of you that eat soy replacements, there was a really good stat that if you've got a choice of a soy burger or a regeneratively raised beef burger. So that would be a beef burger. So that'd be a cow that was fed grass. It was let outside and it wasn't kept up in a pen inside. So it was raised properly. The beef burger removes 3.5 kilos of CO2 from the atmosphere. And that's because if it was regeneratively farmed and using like natural fertilizer and all that sort of stuff. Whereas the GMO soy burger adds 3.5 kilos of carbon dioxide, just one burger, to the atmosphere because of the way that the soy is made in the rainforest. Yeah. Yeah,
well, chopping down the rainforest is going to lead to more carbon dioxide.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah. So, it's really interesting. So a lot of people don't realise that sort of stuff.
So humans have, we have to be more conscientious. Mm-hmm. And if you've got kids, even more so, because... the population of the planet we're already overpopulated. If you do choose to have kids, your kids are the ones that are going to suffer the consequences if you're not conscientious. It's a bit like abuse of your kids if you're not being conscientious of these things. It's on a very small scale. You're not directly impacting them, but you are going to impact your kids long term if you're making these rash decisions and being blind to all of these really bad industry practices. Yeah.
Yeah, and we are going to come on later in the podcast actually about what you can do as a human to be better for your environment and choices that you can make daily.
And spreading the good word, right? Spreading the good word.
Yeah.
Because that's the most important thing that you can do, I think.
Yeah. And the other thing that is the really obvious one with the climate and planet is obviously the treatment of animals as well. Like, if any of you have seen Seaspiracy or Cowspiracy, you know about how... fish and cows and chickens and are treated in some of the farming industries and how bad it is. So making those conscientious choices to prevent that from happening. And I know some of you might be thinking, but organic meat is so expensive, but it's expensive because there's not a high demand for it. So the more of us that start buying it, the price will start to come down with it.
Yeah.
And to be honest, it's only a few pounds more anyway.
And the same with buying, British chicken. If you buy a British chicken, at some point the shelves in, where are they, Asda, the shelves in Asda will be full and they won't be selling their cheap
Thai chicken.
shit chicken.
Yeah.
And they'll have to stop producing it and putting their prices up and giving people British chicken that is the thing that they want, organic chicken that's the thing that they want. Also packaging. If you start buying stuff with less packaging,
Going to the butchers.
I've started taking, sometimes you get organic bananas or something and they wrap it in loads of plastic crap. So I just take the plastic crap off and just sling it on the supermarket floor, because if everyone makes a point that we don't need it's a banana, for fuck's sake.
I know.
It's got a covering on it. Why are you putting it in a bag for? And I think if all people make this point, then they'll find a way to stop producing that bit of plastic. Also, it's unnecessary. It's costing them money to put it in a fucking plastic bag. So it's probably a good thing to do. That's a way.
But
that you
going
can
to your
alleviate.
butchers for your meat instead, they don't put it in. They put it in those little.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still a plastic bag, but it's better than.
But you can take your Tupperware up there, right?
Yeah, you could do. Yeah.
I mean, this is where you have to think ahead, but you can take Tupperware up there. You can use reusable stuff yourself.
Yeah, and also when you go to a butcher, you can ask the butcher where the meat or fish is from. You can say, what farm is this from? How the animal was raised? You go to a supermarket and you don't know what you're getting. And the other thing, if any of you are listening and thinking, oh, but free range is really good, free range means nothing, because it can literally mean that animal has gone outside for 2 minutes a day, and that is allowed to go under as free range. So you might as well just call it not free range.
Yeah, might as well call it battery chicken.
Yeah, basically the same thing. And they're charging you more for that, the ironic thing. So you're paying more thinking that you're doing better, but the one step ahead of that is to go organic. Or if you can go to your butchers, ask for grass-fed, because that's even better when the animals are grass-fed rather than fed corn or whatever. Because then you've got to think also, when you're eating meat or fish or whatever that animal is eating, you're eating. So that's really important as well.
Well, yeah, they talk about corn-fed. Corn is usually a inflammatory thing to be consuming, and if a chicken is being corn-fed, it's an inflamed chicken, and then you're eating that chicken. Chicken should be eating grass. There's a great place actually near here. We live in Kent in England, and there's a great place, and my friend told me it's Fridays eggs, and they've got this, you drive past it, I drive past it on my way home from Chloe's, and there's this great field with trees in it and a real nice fence up to keep them all safe from the foxes. And there's just chickens grazing and picking in the grass and stuff like that. And you're getting a decent chicken that's got a nice amount of land to walk around. It's not this mass-produced crap that's just for the most maximum profit for the corporation. They're being conscientious. So these are the sort of things that we should be looking at and then buying. Yeah. If you think about the conditions, just look into the conditions of a battery chicken. Like, it's insane. It's despicable, the conditions that they're kept in, and you're supporting that industry by blindly buying battery chickens, caged chickens they're called. Yeah.
Okay, so next we want to talk about why we think this is happening. Why is the world becoming this way? Why are we damaging our environment? Why is the planet going the way that it's going at the moment? So we've written a few things down, and the top things so Tristan and I wrote our notes separately, and we both wrote these as the top things were greed and ego, which then kind of does lead on to the other things like consumerism and capitalism as well.
And overpopulation, yeah. Yeah, so I think I had that thought in my head about the overpopulation. The overpopulation one is one that is very, very clear to see why all these problems happen, because of the overpopulation of the planet. And if you go back 1,000 years and there's a few monkeys in a jungle and they can terrorize that place, they could tear apart the jungle as much as they physically could. And guess what? Nature would prevail, it would all grow back, it would all be fine, they wouldn't be able to do an ounce of damage, nothing, because there's too few of them and the planet's so big. The problem with humans is that we're these intelligent, really, really smart monkeys with brains the size of planets, and we have no natural predators, we can just keep consuming, we can just keep overpopulating, and now there's so many of us that we can't carry on like those monkeys could thousands of years ago. If we do those things and act in that way, which we are doing, the planet cannot survive, nature cannot survive, because we're pulling it apart and we're using up every single resource. So overpopulation, really think about it. If you're 2 people, if you're a partnership, me and Chloe, 2 people, if you reproduce with more than 2 people, there's going to be a greater population, and that's going to have knock-on effects. So I'm not saying don't have more than 2 kids, but think about it at least.
Yeah.
And if you do think about having more than 2 kids, make those kids really, really conscientious about the decisions that they make. And then at least you're overpopulating the world, but putting really good knowledge into the world that will stop people trashing that jungle.
Yeah.
We've got to learn to educate people.
Because the problem is that even when our species tries and has a natural cult, so the coronavirus... Coal. I think I'll leave that bit in. A natural coal. Good, I've got you here. The coronavirus, you know, that would have been a natural way to kill off some humans, which is what would happen in the animal kingdom. There'd be a virus, it would kill off some of the animals, and then they don't get overpopulated. But with us, we've decided to invent vaccines and antibiotics and try and prolong our lives as long as possible. And the problem with that is then you're still overpopulating, but there's no natural way to kill these people off. And now our lives are getting longer as well. The natural lifespan of a person is getting longer and longer. So then there's more of us around for longer.
Yeah.
Which actually comes back to what we were talking about initially, the ego and greed, because it's the ego that wants to stay on this earth as long as possible. You want yourself to be alive as long as possible because you only really care about yourself. You don't really care about the planet. So you're willing to take vaccines, antibiotics, all of that so that you can stay around or here for as long as possible.
Again, Charles Darwin, survival of the fittest.
Yeah.
And survival of the fittest works very well in the short term, but in the medium and long term, we're seeing the results of that mentality, and it doesn't work. Charles Darwin was fucking wrong. It does not work. It's short-termism and survival of the fittest. The survival of the fittest, we are one with our planet, and if you just keep taking and taking and taking and being greedy, eventually the planet has nothing left to give. And by the very nature of that, then you can't take anything from the planet and you cease to exist. So we need to stop thinking about it using that mindset. It does not work. That mindset does not work. We need to think deeper. We're so smart, us humans. We're so smart that we can do all these things. We have no natural predators. We control the oceans and, you know, pull millions of fish out of the oceans. We can use all these fertilizers so no plants eat the food that we can then eat. But the knock-on effect of all of these things is that then there's nothing left because we've pulled so much. So we're quite smart that we can do all of these things with these apex predators that can take and take and take and be resilient and build houses and fortify ourselves. But we're not quite smart enough to realise that we have to look after the rest of the planet. You do have to look after the
and
rest
that's
of the
where
planet.
ego and greed comes in. So leading on from that, like one of the issues with the ego and greed is, as we see a lot these days, is instant gratification. So people want things quick, fast. And the problem with that is it is being selfish because you want things so quick and you want them instantly. You're not taking any care for the planet. Well, I know you wanted to say a bit about this as well, that when you're in a rush and you've got so many things to do and all you're thinking about is, I want to do things quick. So the problem with that is you go to the supermarket, you pick up the cheap chicken, you don't think about where it's from, you don't think about what you're eating, you go for the fast food. And fast fashion, that's another issue. So as any of you who shop at Primark and shops like that, you're getting it from some sweatshop in Vietnam where they're getting paid about 10p an hour. And that's because you want things quick, you want things cheap, rather than taking time to buy something that's produced locally. Again, a lot of these products that we buy on Amazon or eBay are from China, rather than thinking I'm going to buy something from the UK that's British, because we want things quick, we want things cheap, and that's another problem. So there's an issue there with greed, so you don't want to spend a lot of money. You want things quickly for yourself, not taking care of the planet and the world and others. And that becomes a problem as well. And then the other thing to do with the ego and consumerism is that because we live in this world where it's cool to be trendy, it's cool that you get respect for driving a nice fast car and things like this, and that feeds into it. So then people want more, they want more things, and they're not thinking about the effect that it has. Just chuck things in the bin, don't have a care for whether it's recyclable or not, chuck things out the window of their car, leave rubbish on the road, think it's cool, like all those sort of problems. I think, a lot of that comes from ego, greed, lack of respect.
Exactly, yeah. Well, let me talk about capitalism and how capitalism is essentially the underlying cause of all of these things. So I believe that there's two things that are the cause of all of these things. And one is the ego mind, like Chloe was just talking about. And the other one is capitalism. And these two things, fortunately, one of them you can control on a personal level. The other one you can't, other than voting for a political party. But, it's democracy, it's capitalism anyway. But these are the two things. So capitalism is like a fucking juggernaut and there is no stopping it. That's the world we live in. We're going to have to accept it. However, capitalism is the underlying cause of all of these things. Capitalism is competitive nature, free markets. So everyone's trying to compete with one another. And the problem with that is that you're competing with one another at the expense of something else. So I'm creating a clothes company. I want to have this clothes company. It's got to be better than this clothes company. It's got to be cheaper than that clothes company. How can I get this to be produced cheaper? I know, I'll go to a place in the world where they have low minimum wage. I'll go to another country that's a poor country and I'll use them and abuse them and pay them the absolute minimum to get this thing created at the cheapest possible rate. And the problem with that is you're starting that effect of fuck someone else. I'm too greedy to care about that other person. So I'm going to get the most profit that I can for me and I don't care about that person at all. And the ego mind is also the other thing that if you run that corporation but you're not thinking about yourself and you're conscientious about those human beings, you're not going to be doing that because you're going to be caring about those humans. But you're not caring. Capitalism doesn't care for people. It cares about profit and it cares about greed. And this is the world that we live in, unfortunately, so you have to be part of it. The problem with this as well is that capitalism it causes a greater shift of wealth between the rich and the poor. So the way that company is working is making this company in this rich country richer, and it's making that poor person even poorer in this country. And the problem with that is that there's no care there at all, and you're creating that divide of rich and poor, and you're making this person, the poor person, they're going to have to work even harder to survive. So they're going to have to buy the cheap meats. They're going to have to buy the cheap clothes. They're going to have to buy the things that are causing them to be in that bad position anyway, because they don't have the time. They don't have the time to look at the labels to see if the stuff is organic. They can't buy the organic stuff because they can't afford it. So they have no room to run at all. And the greedy person at the top, they're not conscientious of this person at the bottom, and they can buy the organic, but the organic's only being bought by the few people that are rich. So therefore, the people that are poor can't afford it even more. So they have to buy even more poor, cheaply raised chickens and stuff like this.
Primark clothes.
And this just gets worse and worse. Capitalism is the problem. It makes the divide of rich and poor bigger and bigger, and it causes this to be more and more extreme and problems become more and more apparent. And you can't stop capitalism. That's the way that it is. But on a personal level, you can be the company that's conscientious of the way that you act. So if I start a company, I can pay those people a fair price. People might not want to buy it because they're thinking about the cheapest price. But if we all become conscientious, I will be buying from places that, even though they're a little bit more expensive, I'll be buying from places that are treating their workers well, that are putting regenerative things into the environment, looking after the soil, that aren't being greedy.
Recyclable packaging as well, biodegradable packaging.
And that's one thing that we can do on a personal level. So we don't have to agree with capitalism. Capitalism, in my opinion, does not work. It doesn't work at all, and it is causing all of these effects to happen. It's causing the divide of rich and poor. It's causing people to do things to the nth degree just to make profits. It doesn't work. But we can drop the ego mind and we can think and be conscientious and not just think about ourselves, not just think about the cheapest way to get things. We can care about the animals. We can care about the soil. We can care about the people in the sweatshops, and we can just not buy into those industries. This does become harder and harder because now there's money stacking at the top. People in England, even the middle classes, are having to work really hard, and they are even starting to not be able to buy the organic things. But you can at least try and avoid it's good to avoid the things that, if you can avoid the things that are buying into those really, really bad industries as much as you can. So they're the two things. Capitalism, you can't do anything about it. In my opinion, it doesn't work. It's awful. It causes a lot of these problems. But on a personal level, the ego mind, thinking for yourself, being greedy, not thinking about the other people around you.
Being materialistic as well.
Yeah, this is something that we can work on.
Yeah.
Don't take more than you need. And when you do take stuff, look at where it's coming from. Are you causing someone else to suffer?
And be patient. Like, if it takes a bit longer for your clothes to arrive because you can't use Amazon Prime, or you're using the thing that's coming from China, like, take a bit more time to do some research to find a British made or European, like at least a little bit more locally made product.
If you've got the time. Capitalism causes you to have less time. But if you've got the time, do it. Make time.
When you're watching a Netflix program, that's the time to be searching for something that's local, rather than getting it shipped from like Boohoo, Pretty Little Things, all those companies. And the other thing, like, I've bought from these companies before, any of women listening, like Zaful and Shein as well, is unbelievably cheap, to the point where they actually, I had an item of clothing that didn't fit me. They just let me keep it because it cost them more for me to return it and ship it back to them. That's how cheaply made it was. And they don't come in like recyclable packaging, but they come in, for each piece of clothing, it's in a plastic wallet thing. So you buy 6 items of clothing and each one comes in a plastic wallet, and then that goes in the bin. And loads of people are buying these products because they're so unbelievably cheap. So even things like that, thinking about, like, I'm going to stop buying from them for that reason.
Think about, why is it this cheap? How can it be this cheap?
How can it be this cheap? It must be. And they are badly made as well. Like, that's where buying the bit more expensive winter coat that's not from Primark, like, I've got a few coats that have winter coats that last me 5 winters because they're better made, rather than buying a coat that's going to last you 1 winter. Buy the better quality one that lasts for years. And women that listen, like, same with handbags and stuff like that, don't buy the cheap shitty ones that just snap and break after like a few months. Then you have to go and buy another one. And where do you put that old handbag? In the bin. All my handbags go in the bin. You can't recycle a handbag, like.
Yeah, exactly.
So like things like that, just spend a bit more money and buy one once every 2 years rather than 2 a year.
Think about the fact that for every extra thing that you have that you don't need, the more greedy you are, which is one of the 7 deadly sins, and people don't realise that greed is a really bad thing. But that's why it's a really bad thing, because the more stuff that you take that you don't necessarily need, the more cheap shit that you buy, 10 cheap things instead of one nice, decent thing, those things all have to be, there's a debt that has to be paid somewhere, and the debt is normally paid. You're having too much of something is normally a knock-on effect of someone else not having enough, and it's that person in Vietnam getting paid less and less, or that soil being treated worse and worse, that fish being treated worse and worse, that palm oil might be cheaper, the peanut butter might be cheaper, but is that because they're just chopping rainforest down and don't give a fuck? Price normally, through capitalism, money being the most important thing, price normally comes with the problem of the cheaper the thing is, the further down that industry you go, the more shit something has been treated. Price is not the most important thing.
So if you do see something that's really cheap, think about there's probably a reason for it. Probably a reason that it's so cheap to buy your selfie stick that comes from China or something like that. That actually takes weeks to come as well. Whenever you buy one of those things on eBay, it takes like 2 months to come anyway.
Think about buying stuff from halfway across the world. It's got to get shipped here with a load of diesel and stuff as well. And you could be helping your friend next door that has her own little local shop, something like that. And
I do recommend any of you who've not seen it to watch the programme Seaspiracy, because things like that as well, like knowing about the labelling of your fish and stuff like we learn about like tuna and the Dolphin Safe company and all of that is like really interesting, and being aware of that sort of stuff, just being a bit more conscious, consuming less of it.
Definitely.
So the last bit of the podcast we wanted to go on to is what you guys can do every single day. We've written a massive list of like really small changes that should be quite easy for you to implement, and by even implementing 2 or 3, passing these messages on to your friends, to your children, it's really important.
So I think the first thing is, like we said, is like on a personal level, do your research. Where's this stuff coming from? Be more conscientious where things are coming from. Things that you don't necessarily need, maybe don't buy them. Give that money back to a charity that, somewhere where they've been working in a sweatshop. See if you can give money back to those charities. So on a personal level, you can do that. And you can also spread the word that you can do something about it. To get rid of single-use plastics, you can do stuff. You can sign petitions, you can not buy it. If you kill the demand, the supply will die because there's no one
Yeah.
no one buying the stuff.
Yeah, so the same with like organic meat. So that's one of the things I've written down is try and buy grass-fed or organic meats from now on. And ditch the GMO soy burgers as well and soy foods and try and get European or organic.
Yeah, avoid soy, avoid palm oil.
Avoid palm oil, yeah. And with some of you might be thinking, but Chloe, 2 organic chicken breasts is £8, whereas I can get free range 6 for £4. All you have to do is have 1 less bottle of wine a week. Like when you go out to the pub next, which a lot of us are going out this summer, instead of having 2 beers, have 1. And when you go out to have a drink, they are like £6 each a drink. So just having 1 less alcoholic drink or buying something less that you don't need in the week, just really small changes. It's actually, when you think about it, a very small price. I mean, I know a lot of people who go to the gym and drink pre-workouts and energy drinks, and that costs them like £6 a week. Just cut that out and spend it on your organic produce.
Yeah. Also, you've got to think about those organic grass-fed chicken breasts that you're eating. They're not going to inflame your body as much.
Yeah.
So they are better for you. So maybe eating half one of those breasts will probably do more for your body because it's actually full of nutrients rather than some battery hen that's been full of corn and antibiotics and stuff like that. So think about for your own selfish reasons. It's good to help humans think about their own selfish reasons for doing things because we are so greedy. But if you realise that factory-produced shit chicken is not going to be as good for you as the organically grass-fed one, there's a good reason there to buy the grass-fed one.
Yeah. So better for your own health as well as the environment. And the same with milk. If you drink or eat dairy, try and reduce your dairy consumption. And we did research dairy alternative milks. Now, the problem with them is actually to produce almond milk and coconut milk and all these problems, all these milks, they actually do pollute the atmosphere as well. So making almond milk pollutes the atmosphere, pollutes the water. But it's still a less effect than having dairy milk, and especially on your own health as well. Having a not organic dairy milk is full of antibiotics and rubbish, and also those cows, what they're fed on as well, goes straight into your body. And any of you that think that calcium, the only way you can get calcium is from milk, that's a complete myth. And actually the reason you're getting the calcium is because from what the cows eat. So you can just skip the cow and eat those foods that has calcium.
I think almonds are actually a good one, really good source. Source
and
even
calcium. Vegetables, kale, broccoli are really high in calcium, spinach. A lot of people aren't aware of that, and that's where the cows eat those foods, and then that's how they have the calcium in their body. They don't just magically have calcium, it comes from somewhere. So that was one of the things. And another thing that I've written down is when you've got electronic devices that you're about to throw in the bin, and batteries as well, so it could be a phone, it could be an old camera or a portable charger or something, and you're like, well, what do I do? There's headphones that are broken. If they aren't completely broken and they're just, you don't want them anymore, so it's an old pair of headphones, either give them away, give them to a friend, give them to a charity, try and sell it for a few pounds on Marketplace or eBay, but just try not to put it in the bin. So basically use all your electronic devices until they are dead, like until they're completely gone. And if you've got an iPhone, even if it's a bit of shit and it's a bit broken,
trade them in, can't you?
You can trade them in, yeah. But just don't put any of that sort of stuff in the bin. Try really hard. I've got loads of chargers and cables and iPhone cables. Instead of just chucking them in the bin, I can just give them to someone or sell them for £2 or whatever. Go to a charity shop, give them to a charity shop if you're done with an old laptop. Yeah. Because these electronic goods in our bins, they're just not going to, how are they going to biodegrade? They just can't.
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah. And it's so labour intensive to pull them apart. It's just not even done.
Yeah, exactly.
The other thing is the packaging thing. Buying stuff that's compostable, biodegradable instead of single-use plastic. And this is getting shout out to Detox Trading actually, who have Chloe's been endorsing, but they've got all fully biodegradable and compostable packaging now. Yeah. And they're a British company, it's not globalization. Obviously you have to get your coffee from wherever in the world, but you're supporting a British company at least who are being very, very good with their regeneration.
I think they said the majority of their products are something about the
all organic, isn't it?
UK Soil Association. They're protected by the UK Soil Association, so they are making sure that their products are coming from places where they look after the soil and they're not using all the rubbish pesticides and stuff. It's all organic, So yeah, looking at companies like that, that's a supplement company for any of you that take supplements. So that's a really good sort of brand, like looking at those brands, yeah. And so maybe even if you are going to buy from someone who's quite a small company, you can always message them on Instagram and say, like, is your packaging recyclable? Have you thought about, recyclable packaging?
And luckily, this is the sort of thing that so many people are talking about it now. There's shows on TV about it now. So many, it's making a change. People are starting to change their decisions and
exactly.
not buying into these awful industries quite as much, which is so good.
And you yourself as well. Make sure you check all your packaging before putting it in the bin, because a lot of people don't think of things that are recyclable, and there's a few things that I used to think that weren't, and now realise they are recyclable. Making sure you check. And if your bin is full, I live in a block of flats, so we have to share our recycling bins, and if they ever get full, take them to your local supermarket. They have massive recycling bins there. If you have a party and you've got loads of wine bottles left, just take them to your local supermarket and take them there.
Yeah, well, buying stuff with glass is nowhere near as bad for the environment as things like plastics. So when you can buy things, and you can buy anchovies in glass bottles, but water in glass bottles, and that plastic doesn't end up tossed in the ocean. You can reuse it. A reusable bottle is a great thing. Yeah,
so I've written that as well, using a reusable bottle rather than buying plastic bottles. And I think that's become more trendy, like Chili's bottles, those bottles to keep your water cold. That's a good thing, really, that they're trendy, because there's not using plastic. There's still a lot of people I know that do drink out of plastic bottles. You work in a gym, you see them like...
Yeah, also, people don't realise, sometimes on the label it says widely recycled, the bottom plastic bit widely recycled. Sometimes it doesn't say that, but the plastic actually is recyclable. If you look at the little embossed logo, you'll see the little arrows going around with a number 6 in the middle or something like that. That's recyclable. So just pay attention. Sometimes you really have to scrub the old chicken off and look really close, but you'll see the recycling logo on there.
Yeah, and check the back. Sometimes it says, like, my hot chocolate, for example, that I get. A lot of people think those hot chocolate pots aren't recyclable, but it says jar recyclable, lid not. So recycle. And coffee, a lot of the coffee pots that you get, the instant coffee, they're all recyclable.
Yeah. And also, some people may say that all of this stuff just gets sent to China and burned or dumped anyway. And yeah, you may be right. I mean, who knows where half of this stuff goes? We know that it is difficult to recycle plastic, which is why 90% of it ends up in the world's oceans. Apparently 80% of it enters the oceans through Asian rivers as well. So again, a reason to avoid countries like China, Vietnam, these sorts of countries. They don't care. They dump it in the ocean. So, try and avoid them. But a lot of this stuff that is potentially not recyclable, at least you can be doing the best you can. So if you can't, if you have to buy something with a single-use plastic that's recyclable, at least attempt to recycle it. Whether it actually gets recycled or not is another matter, but you've got to be doing something, right? You have to be doing something.
And that was another thing I wrote on my list, that at your workplace, if you're employed by a company, has your workplace got recycling bins in it? And if not, try and talk to the management, the director of the company. Yeah, you could be the one to set it up. Yeah, you can be the one, the ambassador. Just say, I've noticed there's no recycling bins. I work in a hospital, and it is awful where I work. So, we all have to wear masks at the moment, and the masks all come in cardboard boxes. You get through, I work on the door, and we get through like 6 cardboard boxes a day. They don't have any recycling bins, and that all goes in the bin. If you want to see the worst, work on aircraft. That is bad, and unfortunately there's not a lot we can do about it, because when you're going to a country, so when we come into Gatwick, we recycle, because we can recycle at London, but when we go to the other countries like the Caribbean, they don't do recycling out there, so we can't recycle any of the stuff on the plane. And the amount of plastic cups used, I mean, if you've got 500 people on that plane, you use at least 500 plastic cups a flight, and all the food comes in plastic. I mean, that's another horrendous story. But yeah, if you work somewhere like an office, just talk to your boss and say, can we get a couple of recycling bins and put in around the offices? That small change.
Yeah. Just made me think of these new electric Tesla cars that are so green. And I think that this is one of these things where people have this blindness, and maybe it's not even blindness, maybe it's this ego. Oh, I'm so green, I'll be driving around in a flash new Tesla. You know what? It does not impress me at all, these people driving around in their Teslas. If you do your research, you'll realise that actually having your old Rover from 25 years ago and keeping it going, it saves the planet. You're pulling less resources from the earth. Even though it's a big polluter, it's far, far more polluting to have a Tesla battery, which is, you're pulling all sorts of resources from everywhere across the planet to create this thing in the first place. And then it's normally fossil fuels that are powering the thing anyway.
Yeah, and
Where
then
are you
also,
getting
what do you do
your
with it
electric
once it's done?
So people, you know, they've got this pretentiousness about them where, oh, I'm saving the planet, I'm driving around in a Tesla, and I just think, have a clue, you're not conscientious at all, not at all.
Yeah.
You're egotistical. You're the opposite of conscientious of anything. Do your research, and that's not a productive way of living.
Yeah, exactly. And then another one was use reusable cups for your coffee and tea. So when you're going out to your Costa or your Pret or wherever you go, Starbucks, especially people who live in London and you're going to work every day, take your reusable cups. And a lot of the places, I know Starbucks gives you 25p off your drinks if you bring a reusable cup. So doing that is really, really important.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, so do Underground Gym, Tunbridge Wells.
Yeah.
They give you a reduction for your shake if you use your own shaker.
Oh, yeah, so that kind of stuff, using your own shaker, drinks, glass bottle when you go out, those sort of things are really important. And I worked at BA, and any of you going on holiday, if you put a empty glass bottle or reuse bottle in your suitcase, when you get to that country, you can then fill it up with, obviously you can't have tap water in all places, but the places where you can, fill it up. That will fill up at the water fountain in the gym rather than using plastic bottles. Otherwise, your whole holiday, you're going to be having plastic bottles. So that's a really important one. Another thing I've written down is if you get your post through your letterbox, switch to online. So online banking, all your credit cards, phone bills, everything. Just get everything online, council tax, as much as you can, because again, we don't know how much of our paper is recycled, and even though you might put your bills in the bin, actually a lot of people don't put bills in the bin because they're worried about security as well. So changing your online accounts your banking accounts, so your paper ones, to online is a good change you can make.
Yeah, and one major one is just don't be so greedy. We're all of us, every single one of us in the UK, you know, in these first world countries, we're far too greedy. We consume far more than we need. Do you really need the mansion with the swimming pool? And it's all very nice in your head having all these things, but when you think about where it's like, try and put yourself into the position of that Vietnamese person working in that sweatshop. Like, just try and empathize with that person. And you living this life of luxury is causing someone else to suffer. Imagine if that was your partner. Imagine if Chloe was going and working in a sweatshop for years on. That's what you're doing that to another human being by being so greedy. Do you really need 10 pairs of tracksuit bottoms? Do you really need a brand new Tesla? It's like, if we quit being so greedy, a lot of these problems with the environment would cease to be a problem. Yeah. So really think about whether you need things or not.
Yeah, that leads quite well on to, if you do need things, so your jumper's got a hole in it or whatever, try and sew things up if you can before chucking it in the bin. Or if something's coming to the end and you actually don't really like that top anymore, it's not bad quality or anything, take it to your local charity shop, recycle your clothes, give them to someone. I've had clothes that have stopped fitting me and I've given them to a couple of my friends who are more petite than me, shorter than me. I just said, have this, like, it doesn't fit me anymore. There's no point me taking it to a charity shop, because it was a Gymshark hoodie, for example. She trains, so she might as well have it. Give it to your friends, give it to charity, and go to a charity shop yourself. Just got a really nice Hollister, pretty much brand new shirt from there, didn't you? And I was like, oh, that's a nice shirt. And he was like, yeah, it's from a charity shop. No one knows. It's still got, if you want your designer symbol, it's still got it on it. The only person that knows it's from a charity shop is you. So again, and that's ego, worrying about, oh, if I get something from a charity shop, I might look really bad.
Yeah, and this is the other thing as well, like, being thrifty has really negative connotations in this world. It's like, oh, you're such a tight ass because you're trying to reuse something. Oh, you just want the stuff cheap. And it's like, you're saving the world, man. Like, we need to make this cool. Like, if someone gets something from a charity shop, instead of looking down on them like, oh, you're such a peasant, it's like, dude, you're a fucking legend. You're saving the fucking planet. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
There needs to be a little bit of a paradigm shift there, I think, with being resourceful is a good thing. It really is a good thing.
Yeah, exactly. And, shoes as well. Like, old shoes, boots of mine I don't really want anymore. Trainers that you don't wear, take them to charity shop, because you never know. There's Samaritan bins everywhere. Just put your shoes in those Samaritan bins. It's still better than, those people who don't have any clothes. They would appreciate your used Nike trainers.
Yeah, if you're going to support those people working in sweatshops by buying the stuff from Primark, at least send them a pair of shoes.
Yeah, yeah, so true. And then I think the only other thing I was going to say with the food as well. So local eggs. So if you can get your eggs, there's so many farms around. Just go try and get local eggs. From just, I think you literally just drive down the road and you'll probably see a sign for some eggs.
Yeah, side of the road.
Yeah, and then just keep going to the same people rather than.
Or ride down the road, because if you can avoid driving your car.
Yeah, that's true. And also reusable straws. So I've got one here actually, a glass straw. So if you can, try and get glass. I think they even do metal ones now, like stainless steel, rather than using plastic, because the paper ones are a bit gross. But these are probably more hygienic as well. And then also fruit and veg, if you can, try and get organic, because that's not using fertilizers and pesticides, which is ruining our soil. And also a lot of these, I don't know if some of you are aware, a lot of these fruit and veg have weed killer on them, which is actually really bad for our health and has been linked to things like Alzheimer's, dementia, cancer, inflammation in the body. So actually it's better to get organic. And again, like we said, the more demand there is for these things, the more of that you guys buy it, the price will come down. So that as well, just even if you think I can't afford everything organic, just buy 2 things organic. Like, just make small changes that are better for your environment.
Yeah.
And again, if you've got children, teaching them all of these things. Oh, another last one, is canvas and reusable bags. So keeping bags in your car for when you go to the supermarket, reusing them. So I hope you guys enjoyed our podcast today. And if you've got any feedback or anything that you want to add, leave a comment below or email us. We've put the email in the description box, or message us on Instagram. Anything.
And thank you so much for listening, guys, and share the good word.
Yeah,
we can save the planet, even if it's just one lentil at a time.
That 1% effect. Yeah, honestly, this podcast is really important. So if you can share it, then we really appreciate it. And also, if you have made it this far, we thank you very much for listening to all of us.
Legends. Thank you so much, guys.
Bye.